Hi, I'm Chris Sarandon, and this is Cooking by Heart, where we revisit the vivid memories of the food we grew up with and the stories and the people attached to that time in our lives. Today, we're fittingly coming to you from JP's Diner, smack dab in the middle of Fairfield's Sacred Heart University in downtown Fairfield, Connecticut. Today, my guest is Hal Linden, who began his show business career in his teens as a big band musician and singer. Later, after turning to acting, he won the Best Actor Tony Award for his portrayal of Meyer Rothschild in the Broadway musical The Rothschilds. His best-known role is as the title character in the television comedy series Barney Miller, earning him 7 Primetime Emmy nominations during the show's 7-year run. He also hosted the educational series FYI, for which he won 2 special Daytime Emmy Awards. Folks, I take great pleasure in introducing my papa from the Rothschilds, Hal Linden. Hey, Hal.
How are you, darling?
Lovely to see you. We go back a long time.
Yes. A lot of water under this bridge.
Yes, much water under this rather sopping bridge. Right. I often like to start these shows by talking of provenance, of where we came from, because it has so much to do with the subject of the show. And your provenance, where you came from was the Bronx, New York City.
Bronx, New York. The Bronx,
How did your family find its way there?
As immigrants to America, they lived on the Lower East Side with all the other Jewish immigrants. In, I think it was 1902 they got here.
Wow.
That was my grandfather.
Right.
On my mother's side.
From where?
They came from Bialystok, which I think is Belarus today. It was
Makes
Russia
sense.
or Poland. It was Russia or Poland.
I think it might have been Poland, but I'm not sure.
Well, you know what it was? It was that's a family story. It was Russia or Poland, depending on the day of the week. It actually kept changing. And the family story is one aunt waking up another aunt in Bialystok,
Right.
saying, Lily, we're in Poland again. And Lily said, thank God, I don't think I could take another Russian winter. It was my mom's side. They lived on the Lower East Side, and then they moved up to East Harlem, was a big immigrant area.
Right.
And then in the 20s, my grandfather bought this house in the Bronx to house 2 of his families. He lived with one of them. Yes, and I grew up in that house in the Bronx. My father came from Lithuania as a teenager, probably in about 1908 or 9, something like that. There were 9 children in his family. One stayed with the elderly parents. The eldest stayed with the elderly parents.
Right.
4 went to South Africa, and 4 came to America.
When your father got here, what did he do?
Oh, he was a teenager. He apprenticed at a printing business, and eventually had his own printing firm.
Right. And your mom?
A bookkeeper. My mom was, she never let us forget it, that she gave up her bookkeeping to become a full-time mother. And,
Right. Like so many women of that time.
And I think she resented it for the rest of her life, because she thought she could have done very well. She was a very bright woman.
Right. And what was the dinner table like at your house?
First of all, it was in the kitchen.
Oh.
We had a dining room, but that was saved for Passover. Actually, we didn't have a dining room for the life of my grandfather. He lived in that room until he died, and then it became the dining room.
Right.
So I only remember the kitchen, a radio on the table, small kitchen, so it wasn't that far to the stove.
Yes, I remember this from when I was growing up. Same thing. The small table in the kitchen. We had far fewer people sitting at the table than you did, I think. But
No, we were only 4
oh
at
yeah,
the table.
and you could
Yeah.
literally reach from the chair that you were sitting in across to the refrigerator or the stove.
Just about.
Yeah,
Just
that's the way it was in ours. And what was your mom a good cook?
Is this going to be heard by other people?
Probably,
The answer
but not too
is-
many of her friends. I have a feeling.
I have a feeling. The answer is no.
No.
No. Let me put it this way. My mother got all her kitchen training and from her mother. She was, and so there were about 4 or 5 dishes that she made that were wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But she had a habit of making chicken soup and then serving the chicken,
Oh, yummy.
or and meat. Anytime there was meat, it had to be cremated before we could eat it. So Mom didn't know anything about medium rare.
Right.
So it was, but she did make some wonderful things. Mother made gefilte fish.
Yes.
You had a special bowl and a special chopper that fit in the bowl, and I remember her vividly how many times. Gefilte fish, by the way, does not have a specific recipe. It's only what's available in the fish market that day.
Right. You wouldn't buy the fish and eat it on its own. It was
No.
always for the gefilte fish.
Right.
Right.
So
Why a
was-
special bowl?
I don't know. It was a wooden bowl that you had to chop.
And probably the smell from the fish resided in the bowl.
There you go. I suspect.
Yeah, and that's probably why she used it over and over again.
And it was terrific gefilte fish. My father loved it. Later in life, we went to visit them when they had left the house and had a small apartment. My wife was in the kitchen with my mother, and she was preparing dinner for all of us in their little apartment. My mother took a jar of gefilte fish out of the refrigerator, and my wife looked at it and said, "Commercial gefilte fish?" And my mother said, "Shh, don't tell Charlie."
Your dad, right?
"Shh, don't tell Charlie." I guess she didn't notice the change.
Right. What were her other specialties?
Matzo ball soup, very good matzo balls. I'll tell you, and the matzo balls, she once told me the secret to good matzo balls
Yeah.
is seltzer water. Mix it with seltzer water.
Whoa.
So that keeps it light and
Right.
fluffy.
Gives it a little luft.
Yeah, yes. Oh, yeah. She also made terrific stuffed cabbage. Loved her stuffed cabbage. And blintzes.
Mm-hmm.
Blintzes with cheese, and we didn't use the blintzes with the
Sour cream.
sour cream and cheese.
Veggies.
Not jam, not jellies and jam.
No. That's an anathema. I remember growing up with cabbage rolls as well, and how much cabbage rolls are sort of ubiquitous in almost all European cooking. In our case, they were. My mom made them with avrolemon sauce, the Greek egg lemon sauce. But the basic inside mixture of cabbage rolls, basically the same. It's ground meat of some kind with maybe rice and onions, garlic, whatever was inside. But it was very, very sort of ubiquitous all through that part of the world.
Think about it. It's probably very cheap to make too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Cabbage. There you go. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And not exactly filet of mignon.
No.
They're cheap.
Right. Now, did you guys go out?
Rarely. And when we did, now understand, my family, my mother, of course, cooked kosher.
Right.
It was not a religious thing, I don't think. It was more tribal, but more to the point, that's how her mother taught her to cook. And her mother died just before she was married. So there was always a kind of an homage to her mother. And that's why we were kosher. There weren't that many good kosher restaurants when we were kids. So most of the time that we went out to what they call dairy restaurants.
What was a dairy restaurant?
It only served dairy, no meat.
And that was in general the prescription for kosher food, right? No dairy with meat.
Oh, that's it. You cannot mix meat and milk. Kosher was the pure food and drug act of its time. When it was instituted, it was a theocracy. The rabbis were in charge. So when they made any kind of law, it became a religious law.
Right.
Considering the porousness of dishware at the time, the concept was that if you had the fat from meat, it did not mix well with the fat from dairy.
Right. And without refrigeration.
Without refrigeration. So
right.
So it basically was the pure food and drug act.
Right. And there were so you say there were different sets of dishes?
Oh yes. 4 sets of dishes in my house.
Whoa.
Because you had to have 2 sets for Passover. You could not eat on the same dishes at Passover.
Ah.
So we had 4 sets of dishes in our house.
So 2 for regular and 1 for meat, 1 for dairy?
And 1 for Passover.
And 1 for Passover. Ah, wow. I had no idea. So then when you went out, did you just go to kosher restaurants or did you go to other restaurants as well?
No. We went to basically, as I said, dairy restaurants. They were not exactly fine dining, but
right.
that are eating out. Let me tell you, you mentioned that I became a musician at an early age as a teenager.
Right.
I actually became a band leader at age 15.
You're kidding. How did that happen?
You can do the arithmetic, but that was 1946. 46, there were no musicians around. They were all in the army. And so I got a job leading a band in a summer resort in the Catskills. The point being, I started working as a teenager, and I specifically remember the one time coming home from a job, probably in a church basement dance or something.
Mm-hmm.
I think we made $5, which was a lot of money in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And I got off the subway at Freeman Street Station and went downstairs. I was going home. It was like 2:00 in the morning or 1:30, something like that. And the local diner was open. And I remember specifically going in and having bacon and eggs. I had never tasted bacon in my life.
Oh.
So
forbidden fruit.
Forbidden, totally forbidden. But boy, that was I never had bacon and eggs that good ever since.
That was it. From then on.
Yes.
Right. So you were out of the house at 15.
I wasn't out of the house. No, I still lived at home.
So whenever you weren't on tour, you were back home.
Well, yes, exactly. Well, I was still going to school. I mean, that was summer.
Right.
That I had a band in a resort. I didn't go on the road until I graduated college. Actually, I was in high school and college in New York.
Right.
And so
tell me, were your parents thrilled that you were matriculating kind of sporadically, that you weren't going to college full time?
Oh, I was going to college full time.
Oh, you were?
Oh, yeah.
You told me a story once about your mom and your diploma.
I graduated college in 1952.
Right.
That was the Korean War, and you stayed as long as you stayed in college. You weren't drafted, but the minute you
Right.
graduated, you became eligible for the draft. So I knew that I was going to be drafted as soon as I graduated. So that's when I went on the road with Sammy Kaye.
Wow.
Playing
Playing what? You were playing what? Clarinet, saxophone?
Tenor sax, clarinet, all the flute, all the wind instruments.
Right.
And I was also the backup singer. He had a boy singer who was very lazy. He was a good singer, but he was very lazy. So we would go on the road, and people would ask for, a request for a tune that was popular that day. And if he didn't know it, I got to sing it. My singing career. Well, it didn't start it, but that advanced it anyway.
Right.
The point is the tour left town before my actual graduation, a few days before. So I never went to my graduation, and I never picked up my diploma. My mother, therefore, never believed that I graduated because I didn't have a diploma.
You can't see it. It didn't happen.
And I would say, Mom, no, Mom, I graduated. She'd say, okay, if you say so, I won't. But she never believed it. Okay. Now, jump cut. We're now talking the 90s.
Many years later. Right.
Oh, yes. Long after the Rothschilds and Barney Miller, there was an organization in California called the New York Alumni. And it was made up of all the show business people who had migrated to California in the 70s and 80s, and they wanted to stay together.
Right.
And they had an afternoon at Beverly Hills High School where they had all the different high schools of New York, so you could go and visit with your fellow alumni. And at night, a big show where all the New York comics would perform, and they honored an ex-New Yorker every year. And this was the year that I was honored. And to do so, they had a big ceremony. I must have told someone about my high school diploma, because at the affair, someone came with a copy of my high school diploma to present to me. By that time, my mother was very old and was in a assisted living facility down in Laguna Beach or somewhere. Next day, I jumped into my car and I drove down to her to show her, look, Ma, here's my diploma. And she said, good. Now you got something to fall back on.
I love it. Your mother sounds like a character. She
was a pisser.
Yeah.
She was.
Oh, you also told me a story once about your mom in the retirement home, and the nurse who asked her about her age.
She was 98 years old by this time. She had to have a procedure. We ran down to the hospital and they were taking her in a wheelchair. We were all walking down with her. A nurse was pushing the wheelchair, and I was walking alongside it. And the nurse was one of those kind of officious, shall I say. She said to my mother, "Oh, and how old are you?" My mother said, 98. She said, really? What year were you born? And my mother said, you figure it out.
Oh yeah, she was still all there, wasn't she?
Oh boy. I'll tell you one more story about my mother, because this one had to do with food. I don't recall ever eating lettuce as a child. A salad was sliced tomato, sliced cucumber, and sliced onion.
Yes. Yeah, this is a Mediterranean salad as well. At least in Greece, that's what they give you. They don't grow lettuce.
I don't remember lettuce.
Yeah.
I was fine with the cucumbers and the tomatoes, but the onions I couldn't handle. And let me tell you, these were not Maui onions or Vidalia onions. These were onions that made you cry in the next room.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to push the onions aside. You have to understand the place of Chinese food in Jewish culture. For some reason, Sunday night in the Bronx at that time, I guess all the non-kosher Jews or kosher Jews who were willing to ignore the problem just all went to Chinese restaurants.
This was, I think, echoed in many Jewish homes all over the country.
Oh, yes. Chinese food became...
Sundays and Chinese.
Sundays was Chinese food. So every Monday morning, that was the topic of discussion with all the kids in school, was where they went to, which Chinese restaurant, what they ate, and, and everything like that. We never went because Mama was kosher. She was not about to break the rules.
Right.
So I'm listening to this for every Monday morning for I don't know how long. Finally, I went home to my mother. I said, all my friends go to Chinese restaurants on Sunday night. We never do. Can we go? And I'd like to know what it's like. And my mother said, it's got onions. You wouldn't like it.
Oh, Mom.
My mother was a person.
Right. So we'll do another jump cut here because I'm interested also, and you're talking about the fact that you worked in the Catskills when you were a teen, right? What was the food like? What was the food like there?
Plentiful is the word. Plentiful. You didn't order food. All those resort hotels came with food.
Right.
Food, and I wouldn't say it was great food, but plentiful. You could eat and eat and eat all you wanted. Everybody was overfed. Everybody was overfed, but I don't recall too many gourmet days.
Right. Just copious amounts of whatever was there.
Copious amounts, because you could order anything. You could order anything. If they had 2 or 3, choices for entrees, you're gonna have two.
Right.
Both. And yes, it did happen, and I saw it happen. They would have 2, 3 appetizers, try the soup, and I'll have an entree, and also give me a taste of the other entree.
Right. What the heck? Right. So then, when you got back home, you finished college, then you went into the Army.
Then I went into the Army.
And you were in Army bands for a while.
Army band, 356th Army Band, Fort Belvoir, Virginia.
How did the acting happen?
Well, all this time I'd been a singer. Understand? I was the band singer, or I tried to be the band singer. When I was the leader, I was certainly the band singer.
Right. You made the choice, right?
A singing saxophone player worked more than a non-singing saxophone player, and I knew all the standards, all the pop tunes. So I worked right through high school and college as a professional musician. In the Army, I'm stationed at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, which is right next to Washington, D.C. And the Army is divided up into Army units: First Army, Second Army, Third Army, across the country, except for the Military District of Washington, has its own little organization. And they also had a unit that did shows and, entertainment. The District of Washington didn't have a piano player, didn't have musicians with it. It was small because it was very small, it didn't service an entire First Army unit, which is like 3-4 states. So they used to borrow the piano player from our band every time they wanted to do a show. And he was the guy who I played with, not only in the band, but we would play at the Officers Club on Saturday night, or the Service Club, or the NCO Club as a gig on weekends. We made extra money. So he knew all my songs, he knew all my keys, he knew, So one time he was being borrowed again by Special Services. He turned to me and he said, "You want to sing a song in the show? I'll have him borrow you too." And I said, "Sure, why not? I'll give it a shot." I don't know. And that started the whole thing.
Mm.
I went with him to Special Services, they called it. That was it, Special Services.
Right.
And I went with him. Not only did they stage a musical number where for the first time, I was singing without a saxophone hanging around my neck, but I was playing a character singing this song. But they also said, "We're doing this sketch. Do you mind playing the character of the father," or whatever it was? You only got 4 lines. You got one entrance. You got 4 lines. I said, "Okay, I'll try it." To this day, I can remember the physicality of making my entrance into that scene. The feeling of the lights on the stage, the warmth. I remember it viscerally to this day. Walking on that stage saying, "Ooh, this feels nice."
Mm.
And then, of course, saying my first line and getting a laugh.
Yes.
So
the balm of laughter, right?
All of a sudden, this whole new world opened up to me. But when I went into the Army, there was Stan Kenton, Woody Herman, Billy May.
Oh, boy.
Tracy.
I used to be a huge Stan Kenton fan.
Oh, that was the best of big band jazz.
Yeah.
Best. When I got out of the Army, they were all disbanded.
Mm.
I went back with Sammy Kaye, actually, and did a television show. And one of the guests, I'll never forget this, Bill Haley and the Comets.
Oh, boy. The beginning of the end.
Well, it was the end of big band jazz and the
That's
beginning of rock and roll,
Yep.
and it was not a musical choice that I was interested in making. That was and so I said to myself, what do I got to do to maybe try acting, try the theater?
Mm-hmm.
I went to the only person I knew who had ever been in the theater was this trumpet player named Billy Heyer. I said, "Billy, what should I do?" And he said, "Well, you got to study acting, you got to study singing, you got to study dancing, you got." So he gave me a singing teacher and told me where to go to. And I started doing that. I looked over somebody's shoulder where they were reading Showbiz magazine or newspaper to see where the
auditions were
for summer stock.
Right.
And I got the very first one that I did. Now, I suspect that part of it was a chorus in summer stock.
Yeah.
But I suspect that a lot of that had to do with the fact that I could read music and I could learn harmony really quickly, having all that musical background. So that probably what got me in the first place. First season, we did 10 complete musicals. 10. We would rehearse by 1 week in the afternoon and do a show at night.
Right.
So by the end of the season, I had 10 musicals under my belt.
Wow.
And that's what started me in
This is a trajectory that I don't think exists anymore for young actors. One that I followed as well. I started, after college, going summer stock, doing 5 shows in 2 months, rehearsing one a day, doing the second show at night, like being in a repertory company. Really,
yes,
the best training in the world.
Yeah, you had no choice but to learn.
Yeah, exactly. And it happens still in other countries. It's just not as prevalent here now as it used to be, and I'm sorry for that.
Well, it's not economically feasible, I think.
Yeah.
They discovered that it would be easier, instead of doing 10 shows in one theater, you did one show in 10 theaters.
Right. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. And from there, it was you ultimately found your way to Broadway. You were you an understudy in the beginning? I know you did some standby roles for a while.
For a decade.
Oh, really?
I made my Broadway debut in a leading role as the leading man opposite Judy Holliday in Bells Are Ringing. That was the first step at the Broadway stage. I was in summer stock. I was going with a girl who was in Bells Are Ringing. That was Franny, my eventual wife.
Yeah, right. I remember Franny well.
And Franny, there was the understudy to the lead was leaving to do another show or something, or another company, I don't remember. And they decided he was a standby. The difference between standby, of course, an understudy's in the show in another position and covers the leading man. They decided that this was, I think, the third year of the show, or the second year. They decided that they would not have a standby, but have an understudy. So they were, Franny went to the stage manager and said, listen, I know a guy. I think he'd be really perfect for this. I didn't have an agent. I was in summer stock. I had to drive all the way from somewhere in Connecticut, all the way down to audition for the stage manager, just so that I could get an audition with the auditioners.
Right.
Yes. I must have auditioned 4 or 5 times for 4 different people. The last audition was in between shows on a Saturday matinee for Judy Holliday herself. She had to know that that for somebody she could work with. I went in auditioned for her. She said, okay. And then I got in my car and I went and played a bar mitzvah in Brooklyn. And I told all the band leaders, I'm going to have to cancel all my dates because I'm going to try this. Go into summer stock.
This acting thing, right?
And this acting thing, right? I started rehearsal on Monday morning with Charlie, the stage manager, and a book. I had seen the show many, many times because I was with Franny, so I'd seen it many, many times. So I was well aware of the show. Saturday morning was the first understudy rehearsal, where all the understudies do the show.
Right.
Right. And right in the middle of it, out came Charlie and said, you better keep rehearsing, kid, because you're on today. It was
your first rehearsal with everyone, and you're going on that night.
And there was one number I had never rehearsed, one big chorus number, dance number that I was in the middle of. I'd never rehearsed it. I'd only seen it from the front. I'd never seen it from the back. I remember specifically going on. Well, luckily, the number was called Hello, Hello There. And it was about Judy's character taking my character to introduce me to the subway, because I was purely a taxi guy. And she took me in the subway and showed me how you say hello to people and they're nice. Mm-hmm. That was the number. So being out of place was okay.
Right.
I remember somebody grabbing my hand and said, dance with me. And I danced with her. And she says, now go over and dance with Phyllis. I said, who's Phyllis? I didn't even know the people. So that was my Broadway debut, in the lead.
Wow.
Role.
Wow. You know, my wife, Joanna, whom you know, and who's a theater actress as well as having made movies and been on television, as you have. And we always say that the great stories, almost all the great stories, are theater stories. That you don't have a lot of great stories when you're on TV or when you're in the movies. because you're part of a machine, really. But with theater, there's always, I remember so many just personal stories that I can harken back to, like this wonderful story you just told. Just so extraordinary. Oh, Hal, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much fun I've had just talking to you and looking at you, because I don't get to see you very often. I was one of your boys in the Rothschilds. Yes. So thank you so much, Hal Linden. You are an inspiration to me. You always have been, and you always will be. I love you.
My love to you.
All right. Take care. Thank you, Hal.